Elite Athletic Development.
Yep.
The most recent one. Real good job on that.
Thank you.
I just got through to the Block Zero hands-on.
Oh, yeah.
Really enjoyed R7, and we're actually implementing that at those guidelines at my gym.
Awesome.
And a lot of my trainers are on the webinar right now.
Oh,
so
cool.
what I was kind of wondering was it's hard to believe with the caliber of athletes that you train that template that you use with them is going to be applicable to a 40-year-old person who is having their first experience with personal training or group training or whatever.
Sure.
So can you just kind of talk about how it does in fact kind of translate, and that template does kind of hold through no matter who the client is?
Absolutely. I think the biggest step for people that are trying to use R7 with, say, a more general population client base is R4, right? Like the reactive stuff. Immediately they think, well, this person can't sprint, right? Or they can't jump, or they come to you with some sort of orthopedic issue. So I think the big thing that you need to do is, it's actually why I wrote a couple weeks ago, I wrote an article about this, like ways to reintroduce power, right? And I kid you not, if you came to iFast, there's 2 or 3 people that you would think these are the most unathletic human beings I've ever seen in my entire life, right? I mean, we've got one 80-year-old doctor. Literally, he's the least athletic human being I can imagine. But he plays golf. He loves playing golf. So we have to prepare him, for the demands of his sport. So even that guy, he can throw a med ball, right? Like, he's not jumping on a box. He's probably not swinging a kettlebell explosively, but he can throw a med ball. We can find ways for him to demonstrate power, right? So I think when you look at the programming, R1, R2, R3, those are standard. Anybody's going to do those, right? That's your standard warm-up. R4 is where people are going to struggle. And so you try and find ways where they can be successful, and that makes it fun, right? Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't have some pin-up aggression, that doesn't love throwing or slamming a med ball. So that's kind of a good introduction for us, right? Like, almost all of our clients, they're going to do some sort of med ball throw early on. Then you go into the strength training, all of that. I mean, you're going to do that with every client, right? You're going to have them lift weights, get them comfortable there. And then the next piece is the resiliency and the conditioning piece. And again, everybody can do that, but a lot of times we're going to progress people nice and slow on that, right? So maybe they're not just getting aggressive with the prowler or slamming a sledgehammer or something like that day one, but we're going to introduce them to, how to drag a sled, how to push a prowler, maybe if it's slow and controlled with the football pad, getting them introduced to the bike. And the sooner we can get them on some sort of intervals, and it doesn't have to be like just grueling 30 on, 30 off glycolytic intervals. A lot of times we'll start with like 6 on, 54 off. So really high intensity, but then long periods of rest. So just like you would train an athlete, right? A field sport athlete, high intensity burst, long recovery. And then over the course of time, you can start to tighten those windows up as their aerobic system gets better. So this is a great question because I get it all the time. And anytime I talk about athletes, people say, well, I train, general population. How do you change it? The big things that you're going to change are the intensity levels, right? The general population just can't accrue the intensity level of a high-level athlete, and that's fine. You're going to change your exercise selections, right? There's probably going to be more med balls in the reactive versus sprints and jumps and that sort of thing. You're probably going to be coaching a lot more in the resistance piece. It's not, hey, let's load up a squat or a deadlift bar and get after it, but here are some really basic things that we can do to groove technique, build better skills, better movement patterns. And then with the conditioning, it's not totally unlike an athlete. An athlete, we're probably going to do some base building, some low-level aerobic stuff, but then when we go into our explosive work, like the explosive repeats, they're going to go 5-6 seconds on and then long recoveries, 50, 60, as long as 90 seconds. So I think if you set it up in that fashion, you'll find a lot of your lay population, if you're choosing the right exercises, setting up the work to rest in the right fashion, you can be really successful using that very same template with your general population clients.
Absolutely. I thought a great demonstration of what you were talking about there was it was in the DVD where you kind of showed that you working the chest pass with the elderly lady.
89 years old, Janice. Yep.
Yeah, that was great. And then kind of the second part of that question was, or not question, but just kind of lead for you was, with that, the thought could be, I could see how somebody might think like, oh, if we stick with this same template, is it going to get stagnant? Are we going to get, is a client going to get bored?
Right.
My initial thought is, well, that's on our coaches to be creative.
Absolutely.
Introduce different styles of move. And, I think one of the biggest things that I took away from the faction the first time I went through is just the different approaches that they take to each section of the programming that they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And I think that's kind of lends itself to forcing your coaches to be more creative and learn more different approaches to those same, that same principle.
I couldn't agree more, man. Before I came on, I was actually going through, if you guys have heard of Boo Schexnayder, he's a sprint coach. We brought him in for our physical prep summit last year. And I'm watching this DVD, and literally there's no sound. It's like, it looks like an old VHS tape, but I'm just jotting down, the jump progressions that he uses, the med ball progressions that he uses. And I may not use them verbatim, but I'm constantly going through and looking for new things to add or supplement what I'm already doing. So I couldn't agree more, man. Like, constantly giving your coaches ways to evolve, not only themselves with regards to the programming, but giving your clients kind of that carrot that you're dangling in front of them so that they know, hey, look, we don't have to do this forever. Like, let's master this movement pattern, and then we can go on to something else or build from there. So I couldn't agree more.
Very good. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.
I got a question.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. You guys have a shitload of semi-private clientele, obviously, at iFast. When you sit down to do the programming, is it like, oh, so-and-so's program's up, let's make them a new one? Or do you do it in like big ass, like every Monday and Friday we, write up new programs for everybody? Or,
Yeah.
I mean?
So the way we set it up, and this kind of started when I moved from being on the floor all the time,
right,
to go into more of I'm on the floor like half the time, but still writing like 90% of the programs.
Okay.
So we basically set a rule in place where if you wanted a new program, you had to sign, our little sign-in sheet by Thursday, right? Because every Friday I was going to Cafe Patachu, I was going to have breakfast, and then I was going to sit down and write all my programs. So there's a sign-in sheet, and then I think you should batch that stuff. If you've got one program, you can sit down and knock it out, whatever. But you'll find the more programs you write, you've got to kind of serially task these jobs where, hey, man, you write the first one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times I'll write the first one, and it's like, it's like, what exercise do I want to do? It's like getting your mind in that space.
Yeah.
And then once you do that, then it's like, okay, the next one's faster, and the one after that's even faster. So by the time you're done, like the first one took a long time, the second took less, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you're cranking those out because your brain is in that space and you're thinking in that fashion. So that's how we do it. Generally with our clients, we update their programs every 4 weeks. I don't know how applicable this is to you guys, but something that I'm starting to do now with some of my high-level guys is instead of updating every 4 weeks, I'm going in literally every week and updating certain elements of their program. So if you can imagine, like, let's say I've got a guy. Here's a real-life example. I got a guy right now that I'm rehabbing. He's got a hamstring issue. So this guy has the most wicked anterior pelvic tilt you could ever imagine, right?
Okay.
And so literally day one, and this guy plays in the NFL. So he's used to like loading up heavy squats, heavy power cleans. Day one, I've got him plate squatting, plate out in front, 10-pound plate. It's like no weight at all. And I'm like, look, dude, I know this is different, but I need you to learn this skill before I can move you on. Because if I continue to have you train the way that you're doing, you're going to injure yourself again. But I don't want him doing a plate squat for 4 weeks if he doesn't have to, right?
Right.
So it's much more dynamic. So with a guy like this, now I'm going in every Friday, and it's very simple. I'm writing the next week's program. So,
And that's with like your elite level guys. Like
absolutely, because they learn skills so fast.
they adapt.
Program like that, right? Versus on the other end of the spectrum, I got a guy who's like 50, 51 years old, power lifter. This guy, it takes him 2 months to learn his assistance exercises and really milk them for all they've got. So it kind of behooves you to understand who you're working with. I would say as a general rule, 4 to 6 weeks works well. But if you got high level performers, they learn skills really fast. 2 to 3 weeks may be all you need. If you got other guys, I don't necessarily like the term motor morons, but it's been thrown around, the people that take forever to learn motor skills. And those people may need legitimately 6 to 8 weeks before you need to change things up for them, because they need that time to constantly learn, hone, and refine that skill.
Okay, and then based off that, I know a couple of the guys in here do this. Do you have like a comment section for people like after a program is over, like what would you like to see next time, or what do you think was good with this program?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's constant dialogue, and I think that's really important. Like, what did you like? What don't you like? What would you like to see in this next program? Have your goals changed? All those sorts of things. So you're constantly touching base.
Okay.
And then we also, every 3 months, do a reevaluation or a reassessment.
And is that to like test the quality of the program? Like, was this effective type thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if they're body comp, we do that. If it's an orthopedic thing, how are you moving, updating resets, all that kind of stuff. So again, there's not only you think about it, you're constantly communicating, right? You're communicating in the session, right? So you're constantly getting that feedback. Then at the end of every program, you're getting feedback there. And then quarterly, you're getting feedback as well. So it kind of gives you the 30,000 foot view, kind of the 20,000 square foot view, and then I'm really in the car looking at this type view.
And it shows them that you give a shit. I like it.
Absolutely, man. It's huge, right? Like,
I like it.
Ultimately, yeah, people want to feel like they're cared for and that you're listening to them. So
cool. Thank you. That was awesome.
My pleasure, man. Who's up?
Hey, Mike.
Yo.
I've heard you talk about trying to address tissue tolerance, and I think you mentioned it in one of your recent articles, how that's a point you're trying to target in your own programming.
Yep.
What are you doing now for athletes, let's say like field or court sport athletes, from like off season up towards beginning of the season, or like tissue tolerance training?
Yeah, so this is a really loaded question, as I'm sure you can imagine. But I'm thinking a couple things, and I'm going to try and make sure I cover all this. The first one is laying just a general tissue tolerance foundation, right? So like that first month is an accumulation phase where we're going to accumulate a lot of volume, but the program is going to be dense in the fact that there's not going to be a ton of rest, right? So the old school way to do this is, say, 3 sets of 10 on 60 seconds rest. The way I'll tend to do that is flip-flop that. So we'll do 6 sets of 3, 8 sets of 3, 10 sets of 3. So we're accumulating volume that way, and it's in a more alactic environment, right, versus going glycolytic first month. So we're going to do a lot of kind of just general adaptive work in that first month. So that's going to help us build ligaments. It's going to help us build tendon strength. It's going to help us build kind of the joint surfaces and just get the body prepared for training, right? Now from there, the other stuff, and this is something I'm actually going to talk about at our summit this year, I think some of the big issues where we're not doing a good job are we're not doing a great job with eccentric work, teaching people to be explosive, stop, correctly using muscle tissue to absorb force, muscle and tendon versus using joint. Right, so people are getting they're getting a lot of joint stress from their eccentric work. So some dedicated eccentric landing work, that sort of thing. General like lower extremity tissue tolerance. I don't know about you guys, how old you are. I don't feel old, but I'm 38. I remember being in 4th and 5th grade, and like we just start class, jump rope, jump rope, jump rope. Kids don't jump rope anymore. They don't have that lower extremity kind of tissue tolerance. So they go out and they run and they have shin splints or Achilles tendinosis or plantar fasciitis. So I think you're thinking quads, right, for like eccentric landings, that sort of thing. You're thinking lower extremity. And then the last piece of this is making your conditioning specific. And this is something I talked a lot about actually on the Central Virginia podcast. I think I linked to it either in last week's newsletter or in tomorrow's. I can't remember. The weeks are kind of jamming together. But in the past, when I would do, say, conditioning for soccer players, right, they would have a great aerobic system because we'd make sure they're doing the right training on the treadmill and they're getting their runs in. But it wasn't tissue specific, right? So there were no changes of direction. There's not a lot of eccentric forces. You get the eccentric forces from landing, but it's not like going in and planting hard and cutting. So we tried to make that last month very tissue specific in that regard as well. So if they're getting ready for soccer, we're going to do a lot of change of direction. We're going to get them used to those eccentric forces, because what you can't prepare them for, if you're running on a treadmill, that's great. You get the cardiovascular adaptation that you want, or the aerobic adaptation that you want. But day one, I guarantee this is going to happen. The coach is going to put them on a fitness test. They're going to start knocking the ball around. They may do a little bit. But day two, they're playing. And generally, they're going to be indoors, and they're going to play small-sided games, which means tight spaces, lots of change of direction. And if they haven't prepared the quads, the lower extremity, their energy systems for those demands, that's when they're going to get beat up and they're going to get injured. So at least for my athletes, those are things that I'm constantly thinking about. So big base up front, big general base, right? And then as we go, get more and more specific with kind of the preparation, whether it's energy system, whether it's the explosive actions, all of those things. So trying to make it as specific as possible so that when they get to camp, they're ready to go.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Good. Hey, you're here.
Yeah, I made it. I got a
super dark room, bro.
I know. I like to keep it as cryptic as possible. I just want everybody to feel like I'm
Slash
mysterious.
creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mysterious, creepy. You take whatever you want from that, Mike.
Whatever
Robertson.
you want, right?
I'm not here to tell you what to think, my man. So I actually have a question based on what you just talked about with Brian.
Yeah.
So you mentioned going more lactic up front and building your volume there rather than glycolytic.
Yeah.
So this is, I'm going to come to it two parts with this. So building your tissue tolerance and volume early on in there, do you find that using any kind of isometric work or eccentric work early on to build volume works for your people?
Yes.
Okay, because I was curious.
Absolutely.
Because it just seems like it's a really easy way, especially for people that have to do, you know, like your soccer players or guys that are going to football camp that have to do a ton of running, to give like their hip flexors and quads a ton of volume without crushing them. So they had the tissue tolerance. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that.
So, and the one of my favorite things for that, number one, are landings, right? So like eccentric landings, that sort of thing, learning how to load muscle versus joint, huge. The other thing is tempo work, right? Like oxidative work for the quads.
It's fucking terrible.
It's like the worst thing ever, right? If you're a back switch bro.
So
could you give a couple examples of that kind of work?
Absolutely. So first off, I've got like a short 2 to 3 minute instructional video on my YouTube page. It's just like tempo or oxidative lifting. But oxidative lifting, you're generally going to think lower body. You need a big compound lift, right? So like a squat variation. I would not suggest a barbell on your back or anything like that. We'll do, let me think, a potato sack squat. Are you familiar with that? With like a kettlebell kind of in this position, you know, down in between the legs, and you're going down and up. I like that position a lot. I'll also do it with like a TRX. So the TRX kind of opens me up like a plate squat variation. I'll do that, and that works really well. But what you do for tempo work is you go, take 3 seconds down. So it'd be 1, 2, 3 down, 1, 2, 3 up. You do not lock the joint out, and then you go right back into your next rep.
it's fucking miserable.
So it's like a fuck ton of time under tension.
In the scientific terms, yes, fuck ton is So you're generally starting with like 40 on, 60 off. Generally, I'll get my guys up to 60 on, 60 off, and we'll do that for up to 6 rounds. But basically, you have a ton of slow twitch fibers that you're building. And I know I've talked about and written about this in the past, but if you play an aerobic sport, at some point you're going to need those slow twitch fibers. They're great for oxidative capacity. They're great for sparing your fast twitch fibers, so you cruise around on your slow twitch when you can kind of hang out on those, so that way when it's time to go, your fast twitch are actually ready. So I don't know if I answered your question there. I kind of got off target.
No, absolutely you did.
Okay.
It's brutal stuff. My girlfriend's she's going to do a sculling competition at the beginning of November, and she's doing some tempo work right now with split squats, and she's way fucking tougher than I am. I would have tapped out on like half the shit that I wrote for her already.
Oh, yeah.
But the tissue tolerance stuff, as you get closer to the season and you're working on change of direction and loading tissues, are you concerned at all with heart rate when you have your people doing that stuff? So do you stay in a cardiac output zone so you give them the stress and they can adapt, or is it just basic change of direction?
Maybe motion analysis. So in soccer, it's 2 to 4 second sprints and then 60 to 90 seconds of cruising. But man, I'm not preparing them for this like hypothetical match that they might play. I'm preparing them for the next 6 weeks.
Sure, exactly. So
I know firsthand by working with 3 different soccer coaches in like the pro environment in 3 years, they're going to go glycolytic at some point in time, right? So that last 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to do a change direction, and it's going to be awful. It's going to be like 15 on, 15 off. It's going to be lactic. I'm going to try and minimize the damage, so to speak, right? So I'm not going to put them to the point where they're like puking.
Sure.
But I am going to introduce it to them, and I think there's a couple benefits to that. One, if they go there in camp, it's not the first time they've been there, right? So number 2, it shows well in camp because the guy that's done if you've done the right aerobic work building up, right, and then you give them that little dose of lactic before they go to camp, they're going to be absolute monsters. The coaches will recognize that. So there's a benefit to that. But number 3, I mean, look, you're just a tough SOB. You've done a couple times, like you're ready for camp. Physically, you feel good. So I hate doing it. It's like I cringe a little bit when I write that last block because I know it's going to suck and I know what they're going to go through. But at the same time, I know that's probably the best thing for them. And this last year, we had probably 6 guys really good. 2 guys kind of half-heartedly went through our off-season program with the soccer team. And those 6 guys, up to this point, have not had like any soft tissue injuries, like no muscle pulls. You know, one guy tweaked an MCL, he got clipped, but you know, those guys have been incredibly resilient. And the best part for me that makes me feel good is like the coaches actually know
it's awesome.
You know, because a lot of times they're just like, oh, whatever, you know, he's just lucky, this guy's unlucky. But yeah, I think you need to get them exposed to lactic work right before camp, and you need to, especially in say basketball, especially in soccer, you need to get them to short burst changes of direction so that when they go to camp, they're ready to go.
Where do you put that? Where do you put that in the week?
I'm going to put that at the end of their training session. So if you think about, say, that last 2 to 3 weeks, I'm going to call it a realization phase, right? R1 through R3 is the same. R4, they're probably going hard. That's going to be their hardest. If they're doing plyos, their hardest plyometrics, their most intense sprints. They're going to be very reactive and competitive in their agility drills. Their strength training is going to be pretty short. By this, it may only be 20 minutes, right? I'm trying to maintain their strength with their base lift, maybe doing some cleanup accessory work, and then at the end, we're going to do that hard kind of conditioning because in a perfect world, we're going to go hard Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I'll use Tuesday and Thursday to kind of maintain their aerobic system with like tempo runs and that sort of thing. So even though you're doing glycolytic stuff other days, you're still maintaining that aerobic base kind of on the off training days, so to speak.
So in the last go round, it's a pretty high frequency of the glycolytic work.
Yeah, they're going to go probably at least 3 times a week.
Gotcha. Cool.
Would you say that applies to hockey players as well, Mike?
Absolutely. Probably more so because, again, I'm not a hockey guy, but I've had to do some consulting, so I've done some homework there. I mean, some of the stuff that I've seen is the average shift will be 30 to 40 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So you need the huge base, right? You still need the huge aerobic base because that facilitates your recovery, either at kind of a stoppage of play or when you come off. But, man, yeah, 30 to 40 seconds, high intensity, you're going to go glycolytic. So those guys need, and they'd probably even go higher than my guys. Like my soccer guys, I generally won't go more than, say, 15 seconds of work. A hockey player is probably going to have to go even longer, where you're getting into some of that pure, like, lactic power work. 30 seconds on, 4 minutes off, as hard as they can go. Some lactic repeats where they may go 30 on, 60 to 90 off. Oh, it's miserable. Miserable. That's probably another reason I never gravitated towards hockey. But
That's brutal, man.
yeah.
Hey, Mike, in the realization phase, how do you balance that increased intensity and competition with keeping your guys safe, like the pro guys, the Indy 11?
It's a fantastic question. And I think I'm trying to think. So Charlie Francis probably said this best, and he used to talk about vertical integration, right? So at all times in the year, you're going to do sprints, and you're going to do plyos and med ball and weights and conditioning and all that stuff, right? An athlete's no different. So even, say, in a base phase, they're going to do some entry-level plyos. They're going to do some strength training. They're going to do conditioning. But it's kind of real moderate levels of all of them, so it works, right? In that second phase, we're probably going to bump up their power work a little bit. Their strength training is going to be pretty heavy. Their conditioning is going to come up a little bit, but they can support that, right? Because we did all that base work month one, so they're ready for that work capacity. Now, that third block, at least for me, that's where kind of the magic happens. And your R4, your reactive piece, is going to go up in volume probably, and at least in intensity. Your R5 is going to come back down. Okay, so the strength training to me at that point isn't as big of an influence. It's going to help keep them healthy. It's going to help me coach them. But it's R4 and it's R6 are going to be the brunt of your programming at that point in time. So that's the way you have to kind of manage it. If you try and drive everything up all at the same time, it can't work. So you really have to pick and choose what things are most valuable to me. What do I want to put the biggest emphasis on? And then kind of shift your emphasis over the course of your training blocks.
Cool. Makes sense. Cool. Who else has something? Frank Duffy, your forehead looks good tonight. What's going on, man? Nothing. Not even
I'm trying to unmute myself. I still don't know how to work this. I got nothing.
You got nothing?
I got
The
Let me think of something. I'll come back to you.
The pride of Cressy Performance's internship program has nothing.
Yeah, I got nothing. He learned it all at Cressy. He doesn't have anything.
I don't gotta ask questions no more, man.
No, it's been a long day. I've been here since 6, man. I'm just soaking it in right now.
You should mute yourself, Frank.
What?
You should mute yourself.
I'm ready to go right now. Have a good night, boys.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rich.
I'd like to know what Mike thinks of the order of PRI stuff and how to integrate that, because I'm really interested in it. I watch a lot of the videos. I've tried to integrate some of it myself, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Which course would you say to take first, as a background to integrate into my program?
Great question, and probably one of the most common questions we get about PRI. So I've gone back and forth on this a lot. And I've got to watch my answer here because I don't want to be totally un-PC. The way I would suggest doing it is, number one, start with Myokin. Myokin is the most easily digestible course. It's the one that is the easiest for us to understand. I think as strength coaches, personal trainers, physical prep coaches, whatever you think of yourself as, we deal with hips all the time. So it's the easiest course for us to understand, to immediately put into play. After that, I think you have to take respiration. Now, here's where I have to kind of watch myself. I would say, whenever possible, do not do the home study respiration course, and here's why. Ron Ruska is the smartest human being in the fitness world probably on the planet. If anybody is anywhere close to him, it is Bill Hartman. The problem is he is so damn smart, he struggles to do this and teach the course. So I would say if you're going to do respiration, which you really need to do second, go take that course somewhere. right? James Anderson, fantastic instructor. Mike Cantrell, fantastic instructor. Learn from them, because I took the home study, and that was probably in 2011, 2012. I didn't take another respiration course until this year, and I felt like I was shortchanged, and not in a bad way. I just felt like I didn't extract all the information that I needed, because when James taught it this year at IFAST, I was totally blown away at little things that I'd been missing, little pieces of anatomy. So respiration needs to be your second course. Third would be your pelvis restoration course. You can do that home study. Lori is fantastic. Be prepared to have kind of this fire hose of information about the pelvis, the positions. There's lots of different kind of descriptions they use for different motions at different joints. Don't let that kind of deter you. Just try and understand the concepts, right, and the positions of the pelvis. If you do that, you're going to walk away great. Plus, a lot of your athletes that you coach are going to be PECs or patho-PECs. And then if you want to take it to the next level, I would be probably the last course that I'd recommend, impingement and instability. So if you cover those four, you've got the hips with myokin, you've got your trunk and thorax with respiration, you've got your pelvis with pelvis, and I are like all the extremities, right? So it's your knees, your ankles, your feet, your shoulders. It's probably one of the funnest courses, because as a coach, as a trainer, we deal with all those appendages all the time. We see issues there, so it gives us a lot of answers and feedback as to why we see those issues. So that would be my recommendation as far as order. As far as getting the most out of them, man, I've heard of people that go to 4 courses in 3 months. Just don't, right? It's so dated, this information. So what I'd suggest is maybe take a course every 3 to 6 months, right? Take a course. Most importantly, go back through the manual, right? Go back through the manual with a highlighter, tab it, mark it, however you take notes, really dive in and try and understand it. Because our manuals, I've gone through dozens of times, literally dozens of times, because there's so much information. And a lot of times they'll have this much information in the actual course handbook, and then they'll have an appendix that is almost the same width that they don't even cover. That's just information that they want you to have. So I can't recommend their courses highly enough. Hopefully nobody tells Ron what I said. Wonderful human being, brilliant man, just struggles to teach the courses a little bit, because he's so smart, and there's so many influences. I think he struggles a little bit to kind of cover the courses the way somebody like myself would like. I need linear, I need A, B, C, D, kind of spoon feed it to me, and then I can understand it better. So just my 2 cents on that, but hopefully that helps you out.
Thank you, man.
My pleasure, man.
The bad news is you're in a room full of rats, man. Which I'm calling right up. Who else?
Done.
You're cooked, man.
I'm never going to another PRI course.
I have a question about PRI.
Yeah.
I feel like the best way to sell the reset drills to high school athletes to ensure that they're doing them on a daily basis as they should be.
Oh, yeah. So the big thing that you need to find with this, it's once you get into it, it's like selling anything else, right? It's a little bit harder sell sometimes than, say, a box jump or a squat or something of that nature. But I'm always trying to gauge, what is this person's driving factor, right? So if they're coming to me with an injury, I'm going to tell them, look, this reset is going to help reposition your shoulder or your hip or your knee or whatever, so you don't have that issue anymore, right? So if it's a rehab thing, it's easier. If it's a performance thing, I just have to sell them on how this is going to improve their performance, right? So, for, again, this guy with the hamstring, right? And this guy's a pro athlete. The last thing he wants to do is hang out and blow up balloons and that sort of thing. He wants to train. He doesn't necessarily understand how this is of value to him. So I have to educate him, right? That's part of it, just education as to why this is going to help him. But then number 2 is sell him on how this is going to make him a better cornerback, right? So in his case, I'll give you the pitch that I give him, really anteriorly tilted, right? So bad to the point that he's constantly pulling a hamstring or something of this nature. So I'm telling him, look, we do these resets, we get your hips back underneath you, right? So not only do you not pull your hamstring, but as a cornerback, And it's not just straight ahead speed. It's how well your hips move. It's can you change direction? Can you break off a route? Can you change? Can you show agility? So I'm selling that aspect of it to him, right? So you just have to find a way, like what drives that person. So when somebody asks me this question, I get it a lot, obviously. You just have to put yourself in their shoes. What do they want to get out of training with you? You know, and in the same way you would sell a box jump or a squat or a piece of conditioning, you're going to use that same kind of idea to help sell the reset. So once you understand what drives and motivates them, use that to help drive the reset as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, perfect sense.
Okay, cool.
All right. I have another question as well.
Yeah, go for it.
So, like, I primarily work with baseball players, so we've started our off season. So, September, October. I know you mentioned from watching your Elite Athletic Development DVDs, you'll typically do like 2 strength blocks where you're primarily focusing on strength.
Yep.
Or say blocks 3 and 4, you want to work on converting that strength to power.
Yep.
I just wondered if you can give me a little bit more insight in terms of how to work on, or just a little bit more of the intricacies of that. How do you go about programming for converting strength to power?
Yeah, so I think the big thing here is the beauty of baseball is you have such a long off season. You know, so many of the athletes that I train, like soccer is just, they're the worst. It's the worst. You know, I'm lucky if I get 6 to maybe 8 to 10 weeks with them. So baseball, we've got kind of that really nice ramp that we can do. And I think one thing that people miss is just like we were talking about before, right, with the vertical integration. If you think about it as in those first 2 blocks, we're chasing strength, but power is always there, right? Like we're always working on, if they're a position player, we'll work on like, you know, base stealing technique, that sort of thing. We'll work on throwing med balls. We'll work on jumps. So what you're going to see is just as we get to blocks 3 and 4, you're going to see this kind of shift, right? So now the reactive piece is bigger. We're going to increase, you know, Cressy talks about this. He's going to increase his med ball throwing volume. We may get a little bit more speed work in. When we go in the gym, you know, we may take our strength training and use like some of the velocity-based stuff. I haven't done a ton of this myself yet, mostly because I'm not training a ton of baseball guys. A lot of times now I give our baseball guys to Ty, but I know that's something he's going to be incorporating with them is, you know, trying to train them, you know, look, we don't want a bar speed of 0.5. Right? Like a max strength type bar speed. We want them at, you know, 1 or 1.3. We want them to be explosive. And with my guys in the past, you know, a lot of the progressions that we would use along the way, right? So their squat becomes a speed squat, which may become a jump squat. You know, their push-up variations. Okay, so a push-up may turn into a resisted push-up, which may turn into a plyo push-up or an explosive push-up or something of that nature. So I don't think you have to see this huge shift necessarily. It's just more of a seamless progression. Like what were your strength training exercises? Now you're just finding ways to make them more explosive or ballistic so that you get more specific, you know, qualities that are going to transfer to the sport.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yeah, oh yeah.
My pleasure, man.
Nice. What else we got?
I got another question, but it's not program related.
I'm fire, man.
All right. If you could alter space-time continuum and ask a young Mike Robertson, what would you do different? Seriously.
Okay, I'll give it to you. I'll give you the real answer. So 2002, I've graduated with my Master's of Science, right? And I am ready to get a job, right? No internship. I'm ready to get paid some. So I have put my resume all over the United States. I mean, I'm remembering Oregon, Nebraska, Texas, East Coast, Michigan, like all over the place, right? No jobs, nothing. The year before, I had applied for a strength and conditioning internship with the Colts. The year before, a guy had gotten a gig with them, and we had an in. So I was like, dude, if I could get a gig with the Colts, like that would be amazing, right? So my professor advisor calls them up, you know, hey, you know, we're sorry. The internship runs from January to July. We don't have anything this year. We're sorry, you know. So put in back of my mind, this is 2001. Well, 2002 comes around. I'm done with school, ready to go out and get a job. Who calls? Rich Howell, assistant strength and conditioning coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Mike, we would love to have you. The internship is 6 months and it's unpaid. I said, Rich, dream gig. I can't do it. You know, I'm getting ready to take this job. So it didn't work out. So what do I tell interns now? Hey, get the best internships, right? And I had a decent one, you know, at Ball State. It got me my start. It got me excited and passionate about the industry, but it ain't the Indianapolis Colts. So I wish I would have just figured out some way, taken, you know, a loan out or asked my parents or whatever. You know, I was always kind of like this self-sufficient individual. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So took the job. Looking back, maybe I would have taken that. And maybe it would have taken my path in a different direction. I'd like to think ultimately I landed where I was supposed to. But every now and then I think, how would things have been different had I taken that opportunity? And it's funny because Rich is a friend of mine now. I had coffee with him right before the season started. You don't see an NFL guy during the season. So right before the season started, we had coffee, and I said, man, I don't know if I ever told you this story. And I told him that story. He's like, you know, you did all right, so don't worry too much about it. But that would be my one thing. Maybe I'd go back and change that. But there would be no iFast, and it would totally disrupt the entire space-time continuum.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
It wouldn't be
Bizarro world.
I know, right? Bill Hartman would be leading like this alternate iFast, and they would just be all like superhumanoids.
Doing Zumba.
Doing Zumba?
Yeah.
You got to tell him somebody said that. I don't get it wrong.
He's doing it in Zuba pants too.
Yes, with the mullet.
Yeah.
I don't have pictures, but I've heard there are pictures.
Oh my god, that's amazing. I would love to see that shit.
I know, me too. What else?
We got guys.
Laura Lindsay's not on here. She'd have a question for me.
She's not.
Speaking of Lori, I was just about to say something. I was talking to her a couple weeks ago, and I think she said you used to do programming for her.
I did.
And, you know, she was singing your praises. And we've had Brett Bartholomew on here, and I know there's other coaches now that are talking about building connections with your athletes. What do you do in that regard to make those connections?
You mean just to, like, connect with somebody?
Yeah, just, like,
yeah.
Especially, I guess, the hard-to-reach guys, like the guys on, you know, the soccer team that
look,
office and things like that.
Man, I am just a persistent son of a bitch. You know what I mean? Like somebody like Lori is easy, right? Like Albert Meal had this great quote last year, and it was about a guy that we both know, and he said, if you don't know Mike you don't like people. You know? Lori Lindsay's kind of the same way. If you don't like Lori Lindsay, you don't like people.
Yeah, totally.
But not every guy's right, or not every guy or gal is like that. For every Lori Lindsay or Dwayne Allen, you know, super extroverted, friendly, like everybody likes him. You know, you got other guys like Roy. You know, when I first started training him, it was a little bit harder, right? Because the thing that I try and do is put yourself in their shoes, right? Imagine how they came up. We can't, but try and imagine the environment they came up in, what they've been through, you know, the position they're in now, just the ridiculous amounts of money that they have and the position that puts them in, you know, with other people wanting things from them. So my position has always been, number one, it's about them, right? 100%. It's not about me. It's not about what I'm doing with them. It's about getting them the best result. Number two, I try and ask as little of them as possible outside of training, right? So if they want to do social media stuff or they want to talk about other stuff, great. But I'm not going to be the guy that asks them, hey, can we take a picture and put it up on Instagram to promote what I'm doing? I don't do that. So those two things. And then number three, I make it very clear, like, I'm here for you. Like, I'm your guy. Some people, it takes one session. Lori Lindsay, Dwayne Allen, you connect with them, it's easy. It's easy, right? Just because that's their personality. Other people, again, like Roy's a great example. Another a couple other guys I've worked with, Clayton Gathers from the Colts, he's just quiet. He's quiet. So, you kind of have to, chip away, ask them a lot of questions, try and find out more about them. Because I'm genuinely curious. Like, who are these people? What motivates them? What drives them to be better? Because the one nice thing is, too, that can give me down the line, if I'm remembering all this, it gives me a button to push when I need it, right? Like, what drives this guy? What motivates him? So with Roy, it was constantly like, every day it's like, look, dude, for him it was a hype show. I was like his personal hype man. I'm like, every day, dude, you're going to be an all-star and you're going to be defensive player of the year. Every day. All-star defensive player of the year. You guys are going to win a championship. So that was kind of the mindset I had with him. With Dwayne, he didn't have the year he wanted to last year. It was more of a scheme thing than his health or his performance. But with him, it's like, look, dude, I think you can be an all-pro. I think you should be an all-pro tight end. You have all the tools. So, that's something that I think a lot of my athletes maybe haven't had, or maybe I do better than others. I'm remiss to say that, but I like to think I see what they're capable of even at a higher level than they do. Because I've got enough confidence in myself, what I can do for them physically to help them get to the next level. So I really believe that is such a huge piece, seeing more in them than they see in themselves. And a lot of times people get confused. They think, oh, well, this guy's making X millions of dollars, or he's had this level of success. They're not always as confident as you would think, right? So having somebody truly that's in their corner that believes in them, that goes a long way. And that's regardless of pro, college, high school, middle school. Man, I love to think that I believe in my kids, my athletes, and I want the best for them. So kind of a roundabout answer, but those are some of the big things that I try and display, or things that I try and focus on when I'm working with a new athlete to try and build that rapport and that connection with them.
Cool. As an aside, I don't know if his stats are up, but Dwayne, I've watched a couple games, and he passes the eye test. He looks like a monster this year.
Yeah. He is one of those guys where he is built like a brick house. And it's amazing what happens, like you throw the guy the ball, he can make some plays. So it's been good to watch him have a good year so far this year.
Awesome. What else we got, guys? We got a little time here.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to have something.
I'm going to keep firing if nobody else is.
Do it, Brian. You're the man.
All right. Myths on structural balance. What do you got?
Oh, man. You're trying to steal my whole presentation on this, right?
I am.
So I was looking through it today. Let me think. A couple of things that I want to get rid of. I want to abolish the term quad dominant. I want to get rid of it. The only reason – well, first off, the quads aren't really – I'm trying to find a good way to describe this. The quads are on and they're active, but it's more by default, right? A lot of times these people are stuck in an anterior pelvic tilt, anterior weight shift. So the quads get overloaded just because of the center of gravity. But when you actually have these people try and move, they don't load their quads well, which seems really weird, right? But like you watch them squat, and part of it is the way they have to squat. If you're super forward, super extended, you have to sit back, right? So they never really load their quads the right way. So I want to get rid of the term quad dominant because I think it's a myth. I want to teach these people to actually learn to load their quads the right way, make a squat look like a squat, where their torso is upright, they get some motion through the ankles, they actually learn how to load their quads. So I never thought I would say this, but for our tempo lifting, our oxidative lifting, I've been doing some of that on a slant board, right, to really just destroy people's quads and make them just huge quad monsters. So I want to get rid of the term quad dominant because it's more of a positional thing, which brings me to, that whole anterior pelvic tilt, all that good stuff. When we talk about the hamstrings, hamstrings are great, but we need to train the hamstrings in a variety of ways. And I think people miss the boat on this too. When we start talking about the hamstrings, we need top-down strength. So think RDLs, hip hinging, that sort of thing. We need bottom-up strength, so all your knee flexion exercises. And then it pains me pains me when I see people that are doing rehab for hamstrings, and all they're doing is like Nordic hamstrings, right? So they don't look at the abs. They don't look at the position of the pelvis. They're not working both ends of the hamstring. And most importantly, they never do return to play, right? So they never take these guys out and actually sprint. But you ask the guy, well, how do you injure your hamstring? Oh, it's any time I sprint. Well, shit, maybe we should probably train that and use that as part of the rehab protocol. So that's a big one. And then the third one, and I've been harping on this for years now, so I don't know if it's new to you guys, but I want to abolish the old benching and rowing. You know, for every bench, you need to do a row. I think that has caused a ton of shoulder dysfunction. You know, I used to believe in that wholeheartedly. I think much more importantly, you need to have a balance between your ability to reach, right? So like push-up variation, landmines, anything that kind of opens up the backside of your upper body and your thorax with your rowing. And it's a huge shift for me, but I've had programs here lately where the person is so, I'm going to give you the profile here, like so extended through their trunk and their thorax, they get no rowing, no true upper back work at all. It's almost exclusively reaching exercises to open that upper back up so that they've got the natural curve to their spine, their scapula can sit where you want, and then the magic happens kind of throughout the entire torso and thorax. So those are 3 things to nibble on for now. I'll have it better worded in a couple weeks, promise.
All right. I'm going to be there.
Yes. Well, if it's not better, then you better call me.
Now you got to live up to it.
I know, right? No pressure.
Hey, Mike, I flew here, and this is definitely not better.
Well, hey, I go first. And I give if the morning isn't worth the price of admission, you can call me out and say, hey, I want my money back, bro.
That would be terrible, but hilarious.
That would be the worst.
Like,
but I think I bill him too, so maybe he could save me.
Yeah, that'd be hysterical. Guys, we got a couple minutes left. Anybody have anything in closing that they want to make sure to take it out?
I'd like
Mike, oh, never mind.
Hold up, or go ahead, Rich.
Go ahead.
No, you're good, Rich. Do your thing, man.
I know from the way you speak, Mike, I've watched a lot of your presentations, and you know the R7 is it's a great approach to training, but you usually start with the end in sight. Do you ever have any longer term athletes where you will block it out a little bit more as opposed to keeping everything as the R7 approach? You know what I mean? Will you just go with strict strength as opposed to having the reactive part in there and all that?
Very rarely. You know, the main time that I'll go to something where I start to cut pieces out, or like say I have a power lifter, right? And again, this, like, say this 50-year-old guy that I've trained for a while now, like his only goal is powerlifting. I could write him conditioning. He's probably not going to do it. I have him do jumps and stuff every now and then. But it's pretty rare. Like all my athletes are going to follow an R7. All my fat loss clients are going to follow R7. And I do fiendish stuff to them, right? Like I'll put R6, I'll do their conditioning with the prowler, and then we'll go to their strength stuff, right? Because I know if I don't do it there, you know, as you go down the program, the likelihood of walking out and skipping a section increases tremendously. So, you can't get your conditioning in? Let me fix that. We're going to condition first, and then we'll lift weights. So, really, it's just like if it's like a pure strength athlete, and even then, like I would love to give them on off days 20 to 30 minutes of conditioning, like light conditioning work, because I just think they'll feel better, they'll recover faster. So, but pretty much all my athletes are going to follow that system in some form or fashion.
Thank you.
My pleasure, man.
Wes, do you want to ask something real quick?
No, it wasn't a serious question. It was a goofy question.
We got 2 minutes, man. I don't know if it's time for a serious question.
All right. You want to add me on Facebook, Mike?
Of course.
All right, cool.
Is it going to come up show dub?
No, it'll be Wes and then in parentheses show dub.
All right.
Also, my birthday's Saturday, and I need you to write "Happy Birthday" on my wall.
I will do that.
All right, cool. That's all.
Mike.
Unless I'm just not on Facebook for the day, but a lot of times I like to wish people happy.
All right, cool.
Like you should just ask Bill about Wes from the Strength Action Seminar, and he'll be able to fill you in a little bit.
Yeah, I sat next to Bill at dinner like 3 times. It was awesome.
I rarely see Bill comment on things on Facebook, but he always seems to comment on something that Wes posts. And
Because I bought that Batman thing.
Yeah, he'll just comment and be like, "Are you serious?"
I love it, man. Of course.
That will just make my day. Thank you.
Yeah, bro. I'm on it.
Awesome. Well, this was great, Mike. Thanks so much again for your time and for doing this with us again, man.
Thanks,
My
Mike.
pleasure, man. Anytime.
Yeah,
you guys
awesome
want to do
information.
this, This is always fun. So.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Well, good
Thanks,
luck.
Mike.
Good luck with your presentation, everything, man, with the summit. So
Try to make it suck less than what I just described on here. So.
Brian Sorg is going to be pissed.
Yeah, he can get his money back, bro.
Keep those podcasts coming.
I will, man. I will. Thank you.
I owe you an email. I'm not. We've been building the gym, so I didn't get back to you, Bill, and you. That sent over questions. I didn't reply yet, but I'm not ignoring you. So.
All right. Yeah, anytime, man. Anytime. I'm kind of working through my next batch of people. So.
They've been good. Luca's was really good. I mean, all of them have been really good, but I thought his was awesome.
Luca, and the thing that always helps is if I know the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Luca and I mean, we hung out numerous times. Like, we spent, like, days together when we were in Slovenia. So he and I just really get along well. I mean, the entrepreneur struggle, you know, so we can talk about the grind there. We came up in, like, the strength and conditioning world. So he's just a super easy guy to talk to. So, and he's a cyborg. Like, have you met?
I've not met him, no.
Okay, first off, Wesley Showalter, I got your friend request. It's coming.
Fuck yeah.
As soon as I'm done, I'm on. But I lost my – yeah. So there's a few people that I put into the class of cyborg. Bill – I think Bill is a cyborg, but he's also just so superhumanly smart. It's hard to say he's not. So I think he has to be there by default. Eric Cressy, cyborg for sure, and Luca Hasabar. Those 3 guys, at least off the top of my head, belong in cyborg level status. I mean, Luca's just a savage, dude. I mean, whether it's talking about training information or coaching or business or Facebook marketing, I mean, that dude knows a lot about a lot of shit. So,
yeah. His podcast, I was going to post it, but I was on a plane and I couldn't. It's like one of the only podcasts where I wish that you could bookmark like you can an ebook. Like,
oh, yeah.
I'm going to go back and hear that part. So,
yeah, he's smart, man. He's fun.
Good stuff. All right, dude. Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. If you guys have follow-up questions, shoot me an email or whatever, man. I'm happy to answer, okay?
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys. I got to go and get that friend request. See you, boys. Thanks.
Ridiculous.
Later, dude.
Kirk Adams.
What's up?